Hey, everybody, welcome to Growing in Real Time Transformations Through Conversation. I am Aaron, and he is.
I'm Derrick.
Glad to have everybody with us tonight. Derrick, what you drinking?
Well, Aaron, I have something really interesting. I did a variation of what I did last week with what the muddled berries, but this time it was not just raspberries but blackberries also, and I muddled them and put some lemon and lime juice in it to kind of brighten it up, and some monk fruit sweetener because that's very keto friendly, right? Then I added some bourbon and added a little bit of Spindrift sparkling water, and this is raspberry lime flavored, along with some light ginger beer. And,
Nice.
and, and it's like for each one of these cans, this is only 7 grams of carbs and 30 calories.
Nice.
So it's like kind of holding things to a sort of a keto friendly approach. But but yeah, that's what I'm drinking tonight. And you are drinking
I just have a gin and tonic.
a classic.
Yeah. Not many people drink those anymore, but I like them. I was telling you in the in the back room, my parents used to have this. What were they thinking? I don't know, but they had like cocktail flavored candies,
Yep,
um, like Manhattan whiskey sour,
yep,
and one was a gin flavor. And I
yep.
always liked the gin flavor. That was the one I always went for when I was a kid. So anyway, but before we get started, I just want to give a shout out to my local folks and let people know that don't know. So last week I went fishing, right? On Friday, I think I talked about that in the show. Took the kids fishing, and then we went again on Sunday. And we wake up Monday morning, and the mountain where we were was on fire, and it was about less than 20,000 acres on fire, I think. And last I saw, and I don't want to be giving out misinformation, but because I didn't verify it, but last I saw it's grown to 77,000 acres.
Wow.
It's just been burning out of control. We know several people, 11,000 people have been evacuated from Pueblo County in Custer County, the county that borders it. And that was the mountain we were on. It's completely on fire. There's smoke everywhere, it's blocking out the sun at times, hot ash falling where I live.
Wow.
So it's considered the number one priority forest fire in the nation right now. They got 6 hotshot crews and they got 90. I just saw 90 fire engines from around the country on the way.
Wow.
So it's really bad. We know some people that we know and love, known forever, who've lost their homes. And but with all that said, we're safe where we're at. We're on the plains, so it would have to, grass fires are a lot different than trees catching on fire. So
Yep. Yep.
and we got a river and a reservoir. Although people online are saying that doesn't mean anything, but I think it probably does. We got a river and a reservoir between us and them. But I think if my estimations are right, it's about 12 miles away from us where it's burning.
That's still very close.
Yeah,
That's like too close for comfort kind of thing.
yeah. I don't know what 77,000 acres is, but it's hundred, no, not hundreds, but it's maybe 100 square miles, something like that. I don't know. So it's pretty bad.
Wow.
So anyway, shout out to everybody in our community that's
Yeah, you shared some pictures with us with myself and Daryl, and dude, it's like that looks like you're on the precipice of hell.
it really does, and for a lot of people it is. Uh, so yeah, we knew it was going to be bad this year because we didn't get any snow and we're in a drought. I think humidity today they said was less than 5%. Winds gusting up to 100 miles an hour, so it's just a perfect storm
Wow.
for forest fires. So anyway, I just felt I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to our local viewers.
No, dude, by all means. And one quick thing I want to say before we get too far downrange is that the next 2 Fridays. Now, Aaron, if you want to continue to do
Yeah,
shows on
yeah,
Friday, by all means, have a guest or do something on your own.
yeah.
But
Um,
May and I are going to be out. We're going to be in Hong Kong for 10 days. So
Nice.
we're really excited about that. We're busy packing and getting ready and all of that stuff. And of course, I'll talk to you before I go, but we will be gone.
All right. All right, so I guess that brings us to our topic for tonight.
Yes.
So I chose the topic. So something I've been thinking about all week. We've talked, over the years, a lot about theology, and seems to kind of come around to the question: how has theology moved the needle for people, especially if we compare it to physics and technology and industry, medicine, things like that?
Yep.
And and it just occurred to me this week that downstream from theology is anthropology. And by anthropology, I just mean how we understand the human being. What is the human being? Who are we?
So real quick, let's just do this to set things up.
Sure.
Give us a quick working definition of theology and a quick working definition of anthropology.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Sure. So just off the top of my head, theology, theos, being God, and ology, obviously being the study of God, the logic of God, that kind of stuff. So this entails things like omniscience, omnipresence, and I would actually, I was thinking about it this week, and we can talk about this, but I'll just throw it in with the definition. I think to a certain degree, committed atheists are also doing theology. They're just doing theology from the perspective of there is no God to know, right?
Yeah, it's like negative theology.
Yeah, negative theology.
Yeah.
So downstream from all of that is, how does it affect us? Like the so what, right?
Yep.
And that's kind of where we've landed on theology in the past. I think the so what, like who cares? But when theology impacts anthropology, our understanding of the human being, then it means something to us, and it shapes the way we think about ourselves. It shapes the way that we give meaning to ourselves and to others, right? And so I'll just open it up by giving, let's just take this is what I would call the big three, right? You got the theology of religion, which is generally monarchical. I don't know if that's a word.
Yeah, it is.
But the king in the sky, right? The God in the sky.
Yep.
From the Christian perspective, the judge in the sky, we're separated, we're corrupt, we have to do something by works or by faith or whatever to change that dynamic, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. We're sinners saved by grace. So that's the anthropology. With atheism, scientific materialism, we're just hairless apes, right?
Right.
And the thing I've been thinking about with this is, like, if that is true, if this is all just, evolution and we're hairless apes and stuff, it's really interesting that we developed in an evolutionary cycle to the ability to self-reflect and think about our life and our death and our meaning, rather than just our survival or the survival of our species. And then for just lights out, at the end.
Yeah.
So I don't know, from my perspective, that doesn't leave us in a much better position than being sinners saved by grace. Yeah. It might even be worse. And then the third one is sort of this idea that we're returning to the source, right? There's all kinds of different ways, different religions and philosophies that look at it like everything is one. Our sense of self as an individual that we call the ego, the sense of separation, that's the problem. And the spiritual goal seems to be the erasure of self, which is also a toxic anthropology, right?
Yeah.
And then I guess the fourth alternative, we've been talking about Reverend Ike and that kind of stuff, and we've talked about the I Am. You wrote a really good article, shout out to you, on Patheos. Do I have that right?
Patheos, yeah.
About, it's really a well thought out article about that deals with this issue of anthropology and who we are.
Yeah.
And so I guess my question has been, how can we maybe not construct may be the wrong word. I don't know the right word here, but how can we think about ourselves in a way that's healthy and empowering and hopeful, versus one that is diminishing or meaningless or not at all? We don't exist.
Yeah. And, you talked about the whole hairless apes aspect of it, right? That we're just, hairless apes, meandering through reality, and I think that is a very reductionist and hopeless view.
Yeah.
I think that the fact that we are animated by spirit, by consciousness, that means there's something greater
Hmm.
going on. And if we look at this from by the numbers, physics says that energy is neither created nor destroyed.
Right.
So that means whatever you are right now has already existed and will always exist. So when the body dies, what happens? Is this just the end of it? You know, it's lights out, party over, or is there a hope of a transformation of energy
Right.
that we go on to become something else? In other words, are we going on to become reincarnations of human entities? Are we becoming something greater, like a galaxy, a sun, or something like that? What actually happens?
Hmm.
And you had posited a question that I think is really urgent to this discussion, and that is anthropology the toxic part? You know, because from a religion versus atheism standpoint, we can easily say, oh, theology is the problem.
Right.
Theology is the problem. There is no God, therefore there's no argumentative point to a
Right.
God. But if you say, let's take God out of the equation,
Right.
and we say consciousness, and if we operate from the premise that consciousness is as close to God as we'll get, that means that to reduce it to mere anthropology does it a grave disservice.
Right.
And so I'm, you know, like I said, you've helped me. Maya has helped me. Sandy has helped me. I've had people in my life. Jube has helped me. That, you know, I want to say there's so many times where I want to say secular humanism is it. You know, it's like what is the meaning of humanity from a purely secular standpoint? But I think what that does is that discounts and dismisses anything mystical,
Hmm.
anything metaphysical, and because of that, I think it does it a disservice. I think that we really need to look at this holistically.
Hmm.
That it's not just we're not trying to go headlong into theology and say that this is what it is. Likewise, we're not saying anthropology that this is what it is. That there is some converging point between the two, a converging zone where these two come together and they begin to help us make sense out of things that we're not able to make sense out of. Okay, let me just say this, and then I'll kick it over to you. Is that I think that given a sufficiently long timeline,
Hmm.
I won't even say most things, but let's say we'll get to a working knowledge of the quantum universe, such that we kind of understand where we come from and where we're going.
Yeah.
Is that to say that we'll understand everything? No. And you've made a very good point about this, that there are just some things that are beyond our ability to measure in a tangible, measurable, repeatable way.
Yeah.
And so what we need to do, if we're going to be whole humans and operate in full humanity and full divinity, that we have to hold out space for that which we don't understand.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like where I am right now. I don't before it was like I was content to say there's no God. There's no God. You know, all this Bible shit is just nonsense. And I'm like, I've been going back and going through some biblical teaching, and I see where this aligns with Gnostic teaching. I see where this aligns with Hindu teaching or Vedic or Zoroastrian. There's a common denominator
Right.
to all of this, and because there's a common denominator, that throws a wrench in any reductionist argument. So that's where I'll kick it in.
Yeah. It's interesting because what was it, the temple at Delphi? Most people know this.
Yep.
Like
the Oracle at Delphi.
The Oracle, where you go to see the Oracle, there was a saying over the entryway or whatever. I mean, I don't have it all right, but basically it said, "Know thyself," right?
Yep.
And the word "know" there in the Greek is the same word that we get Gnostic from. So it's not knowing as in knowing about something. It's knowing through experience, right? Knowing yourself by experiencing yourself.
Yep.
Just like Gnosticism is experiential knowledge. It's not aboutisms, right? We know about what the universe does. We know about who we are. We know about what God is. We know experientially. That was the Gnostic frame. So what I find interesting, like from my perspective, and I really have you to credit for pushing me down the scientific road more than I was willing to go before, several years ago. It's been several years now. But there's so much that goes on inside of us that as a society, as a culture, especially one that's sort of secular, humanist, and materialistic, does not appreciate. And there are depths and layers to it that are just unreal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And having studied psychology and being a counselor, that's been my area of interest and my area of work. Plus working on myself, right? Like who is this person? Who is this ghost in this machine?
Yep.
Right. And so I do think that what's interesting to me is we're all well aware of, I think, the damage to meaning, the anthropology that traditional religion does. We're just sinners, we're just worms, we're just whatever.
Yep.
But in the West, the way we've approached science, the way we've approached knowledge, we've tried to erase the human being from that as well. That's why you have double-blind studies, right?
Right.
You're trying to remove the observer's observation from the...
And that's a really good point, because even in quantum physics, we know that with the observer effect has an influence,
right,
information or influence on the outcome.
Yeah. So I'm gonna throw out an idea, theology, anthropology kind of idea. So I think I talked about this, but about a year ago I tried psychedelics for the first time, and I was just doing mushrooms, but they were like I don't know. I was with a group of shaman up in the mountains, not where the mountains are burning, but in a different part of the state.
Yep.
And they told me, they were some of the most powerful mushrooms you could get or whatever. And I didn't really know what to expect. I just felt in my heart, I should try this, right? I wasn't doing it recreationally. That's why I'm emphasizing I was with a group of shaman. It was like a medicine ceremony, right? And it was awful. And it wasn't a bad trip. When I came out of it, everybody that I've spoken with that has done psychedelics was almost like, you got on your first trip, like Timothy Leary and, everybody that's been trying psychedelics outside of for recreational purposes has been trying to get to, and that was you experienced an ego death. Because I was like, this is awful. Like it wasn't a scary trip. It wasn't, I wasn't anxious. What happened to me was I was just nothing but consciousness. With no identification whatsoever with anything but a singularity of consciousness for about 4 hours. And I remember laying there because we did it outside the mountains. You know, I'm looking up at the sky and I'm just laying there thinking, if this is eternity, this is hell.
Yeah.
And then I had this interesting part. And I've never talked about this, but you know, I was coming off of my near-death episode. To be clear, I didn't have a near-death experience. I had a near-death death, almost. I almost died in the hospital, and I did relive that experience while I was on the psychedelics.
Mm-hmm.
I relived it from the standpoint of consciousness rather than as the ego, as Aaron, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was so interesting because in this particular timeline, this particular version of multiverse, whatever, this experience, I did die. And I'm watching the doctors like typing in the notes, right?
Yeah.
And I have no more attachment to it than I would have looking at a list of names on a memorial or looking at some kind of record of somebody.
So you weren't like totally invested in what you saw.
Not only was I not totally invested, I wasn't invested at all.
Okay.
Not at all. It was just like data, right?
Wow.
And I'm sitting there, and this is what I took from that experience. And this has been hard for me to communicate, and it's been hard for people to receive, especially in the spiritual community. So here's my hypothesis that I ran from it, right? Mm-hmm. Because I was stuck in this singularity of consciousness. In other words, the only thing I was aware of was awareness. There was no emotion. There was no attachment. There was no other out there. There was no experience to have. So let's just suppose that whatever has always existed was a monad of conscious awareness.
So tell us what a monad is.
So that's hard to, that might be hard for me to explain, but a singularity. I'm thinking of this strictly mathematically, and this is where I think people struggle with it. Like, if there is just one thing, there is nothing to experience. There is nothing to relate to.
Right.
No new knowledge. There's no new anything. There's just the one. Right. And I thought, what if all of these religions, spiritual paths have been intuiting this oneness? And what if this is what preceded, let's say, the Big Bang? This is just a thought experiment. Mm-hmm. And what if this thing, this consciousness, this awareness, somehow was able to split itself in a way that it could relate to itself? So that it wasn't in isolation anymore because of the hell of isolation.
So in other words, it created an expression so that it could understand the experience.
I'm almost thinking about it psychologically. Last week we talked about me, myself, and I, right? That's a network of experience within the one person.
Yep.
So what I'm suggesting is that it started out as a strictly a monad, one thing.
Yeah.
And then somewhere along the way was able to split itself off into a me, myself, and I. Okay. Which is interesting because that's almost a Trinitarian view.
That's where I was going last week. I was going for the Trinity.
And then from that space exploded out into multiplying itself into all kinds of varieties. Galaxies, you mentioned, do we become a sun? Do we become a planet? All kinds of varieties for the express purpose of having experiences, for the express purpose of having, so that it's all one thing. The intuition that people have in the spiritual community about oneness is correct, but I think they tend to simplify to reduce it down to a mathematical oneness that devalues, in the end, back to anthropology, our individual expression of that. So what if we are that, which was in the beginning as the monad, experiencing a point of consciousness for the express purpose of whatever that was up there sucked, which means which means all these spiritual paths that are trying to get back to the monad. I came out of that experience. I'm like, you guys don't even know what you're asking for. Like you are asking to live in complete isolation. Imagine yourself living in solitary confinement in a white room with nothing but white,
right,
for the rest of your life. Why would anybody want to go back to that?
That would be hell.
So what if consciousness is what we call God, was consciousness or awareness in a fundamental existence that emanated out in order to manifest these experiences, and eternity forward will just be an ongoing repetition's not the right word, an ongoing unfolding is the right word. Yeah
Because I don't want to think of it as repetition. We just have to go through the same thing, because and I have some belief in reincarnation, but I also believe that that each iteration of life or existence, that it has to be something that further explicates, what the experience. In other words, it's not just a repetition, because if it's a repetition, then basically life becomes, pure heaven and hell kind of experience.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the same thing, right? It's like being a Christian and you spend eternity saying holy, holy, holy around the throne of God.
Yeah, exactly. Oh,
that repetition becomes hell, right?
Yeah. So this is what I think. I think that that the big thing is, like, from an anthropological standpoint, understanding humanity, because this is where I think religion misses it, and I think atheism misses it. Because what religion wants to do, religion wants to reduce the human experience to something that is happening in God. Right? That outside of God, you don't have any understanding, you don't have any experience. But the atheist, on the other hand, says that you're having this experience irrespective of any God. And I think that both of them are wrong, because there is something greater. We've talked about this. I've talked about this with Maya. I've talked about this with a lot of people that I know, is that when I look at God, I see consciousness. And let me say this too, that when people like secular humanists and scientificists, if that's a word, where they get to their root, right, their prime mover, they say, okay, Big Bang.
Right.
I don't think that the Big Bang is what we think it is. And I'm going off on a tangent here, but stay with me. I believe that just like we inhale and exhale, so when we inhale, we're concentrating or contracting, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen into our lungs.
Yeah.
And this begins a biological process that we call breath, right? So we inhale, and this is a contraction. But then we exhale. And all of the carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and all of the things that are anathema to life, we expel. So conversely, I think that the universe, okay, I'm going to get into something really difficult here. It's like people say, well, God always existed. I will say that in the same vein, the universe has always existed. That it goes through cycles of contraction and expansion. So right now, this point in time, if we're being mindful, this
Mhm.
point in time, according to everything that we understand, everything that is tangible, measurable, repeatable to us, the universe is expanding.
Right.
And it will expand for some duration. And at some point, it's all going to collapse back onto itself and repeat. Okay, so why is this important? When we start talking about theology, theology then becomes a process, and anthropology becomes a result.
Yeah.
And I think that, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron, but that's where I kind of think it goes.
Hmm.
So you asked a question in the original premise of the discussion. You know, is anthropology the problem?
Right.
And I would say that I won't say definitively that you're right, but I will say that I think that you're on the right path, because I think that anthropology by nature is reductionist. And we know from a critical thinking standpoint that when we get into reductionist thinking, that we open ourselves up to a lot of erroneous uh, thinking. So the thing is, we don't want to be reductionist. We don't want to say, okay, here's the theology. Theology is the cosmos. The theology is consciousness. The theology is the universe. Okay, great. But then we say anthropology, right? This is the human expression or manifestation of this. And are we specifically having a human experience? In other words, is this something that's uniquely human, or is this something a broader experience that we're sharing? And that's where I agree with you, where anthropology may be the problem, because we want to humanize everything. We want to reduce everything. We it's like this great factoring exercise where we're trying to get down to the greatest common factor, the lowest common denominator. What is it that ties all of this together? And what if what if there is neither?
Yeah.
What if there is neither a greatest common factor? What if there is not a lowest common denominator? What happens then? Does this cause the wave function of humanity to collapse into something, or is it that we see this now no longer as we're no longer particle hunting, but we're looking at, okay, what happens in this field? And I'm just, brother, I'm like I'm going through an expansionist kind of moment right now.
Well, I think you're right on, and I do think, I mean, I've definitively landed on the latter. I can't remember exactly how you said it, but you talking about anthropology being reductionistic.
Yeah.
Maybe it's all part of something greater. Maybe there's no
And there has to be something bigger, because
dominant.
when we get to anthropology, we say, okay, this is how we distill this into something that we can understand.
Mhm.
And while I'm okay with understanding, I think that there are some things that are bigger, and that's why we have to avoid the trap of anthropology when we're discussing theology.
Yeah, especially because if you look at traditional anthropology, it's still locked into external observations. Like I can't get away from this. I've been thinking about this a lot. Um, we talk about, let's see, how do I say this? God being within us, right? But if we take a broader view of consciousness, that whole question presupposes that our capacity for consciousness is reduced down to whatever's happening in our brains and happening inside. Like we have this inside
Yeah.
outside barrier that we assume. And again, because I don't know what you're going to say before you're going to say it, right? I don't know what you're thinking, what you're feeling.
Yep.
You don't know what I'm thinking or feeling. So there's this sort of natural barrier that we have that we localize around bodies, right? So it makes sense. Yeah. We would arrive at that. But, people say, well, God is within us. And again, I'm using the word God very loosely.
Yep.
I'm not talking about
no,
God.
You're fine. You're fine.
But
because it's totally pertinent to the discussion.
But what if what we call within is simply a terrain of consciousness, not unlike dreams, right? So I had a dream last night. I had a friend in the dream that I haven't seen in several years. He was driving a Volkswagen Beetle. Everything that I would experience in real life, I was experiencing there. The feelings, the emotions, the depth, the space, the people, not knowing what they're going to say next, them responding to me, everything like I would in the natural, waking world. But the truth is, none of it has any spatial dimensions whatsoever. There wasn't a Volkswagen Beetle. There wasn't my friend in the dream from a physicalist sense, right? But is there a reason that should invalidate the experience or the power and the meaning of the experience? And I would say no. And so I think that, when people talk about visitations, whether it's, well, let's take it outside the realm of religion. Let's take it into the realm of psychic mediumship or something like that, right? We think of ghosts inhabiting houses, so they're knocking shit around in the house or whatever. Or we think of a medium, there's spirits in this room, right? What if it's not really, I'm talking to your deceased grandmother who's in this room right now. What if it's not in this room? What if it's interior? What if it's in this space of consciousness? And it's just a matter of perceiving, opening up our conscious perceptions to expand beyond just the limits of the five physical senses. And when we do that, then we meet real others out there, whether it's, what people call angels or deceased loved ones or whatever the case may be. But we've folded our expectations into it has to represent itself as a physical phenomenon, unaware of the fact that it's actually happening on a completely different territory, which is consciousness. Does that make sense?
I'm going to go back to something that you said before, right? That the map is not the territory.
Right.
Right. So what happens is that we look at the map. And I think this is where anthropology goes wrong, is that we become reliant on the map and to the point where we say, okay, the map is the territory.
Right.
And so now I'm trying to navigate this from the standpoint of, okay, this is my my understanding of God, and this is my understanding of how God expresses itself in humanity. And so I come to this by some map that I have defined. So I've assigned certain attributes, certain elevations, certain changes in terrain to just the map.
Right.
And I think that where we go wrong with this is we start, like you said this so eloquently so many times, and I come back to this all the time, that the map is not the territory. Mm-hmm. So if the map is not the territory, why are we leaning so hard on the map?
Right.
And instead, let's use the map to navigate us to something that we don't know or we haven't been to, we don't understand. and let's try to gather understanding based on the being in the moment, being mindful.
Yeah.
Let's figure out how to do that instead of saying, okay, well, this is what it is because I've mapped this and I'm confident that the territory is this.
Yeah. I think that's the mistake that we make. Back to your article on Pathos. Do I have that right?
Pathos, yes, sir.
Yeah. I was marveling at it, honestly, because you're presenting the idea that the New Testament is a totally different map than what we thought it was.
Yeah.
And I love how you like, here's how I hear it. This may not be what you intended, but I'll tell you how I hear it or read it. Myth making is essentially entirely map making. It's an attempt.
It is.
To use symbol, metaphor, language to describe a territory.
Yep.
And where we mess up is we think that the myth is the territory in the sense that it's got to be literal, historical information, right?
Right.
And I think you raise an incredible question in that article that you wrote where you're approaching the Gospels from a mythic perspective, at least that's how I read it. Defining it as a genre, if you will. This is, again, how I'm processing it, so you help me out. Let me know.
Go ahead, man. You're on a roll.
Defining it as a genre that's different than historical records.
Yeah.
And then you make this turn in the article, and it surprised me, to be honest with you. And I thought, wow, that is brilliant. You make this turn to suggest that if whoever wrote these things, whoever crafted this myth around Jesus, if their intention was the empire, if their intention was political, if their intention was earthly power,
yeah,
because you mentioned it becoming a business, right?
Yeah.
They really didn't do a very good job because Constantine onward had Jesus assuming the throne and being exclusively an expression of God. And you point out how in the Gospels, that's not the myth that's being told in the Gospels at all. And I think it opens up a way of approaching it in a different manner that may be truer to the original intention of the actual authors. What is the myth? What's the map that's being drawn here for the rest of us? And it seems to me, when I think about it that way, that what they were mapping in the Gospels was a pathway to a human experience that is not confined to the three-dimensional world or our five physical senses.
That is spot on. That's
what I got from it. I thought it was brilliant. I just thought it was a brilliant article.
The thing is that okay, so we do have this three-dimensional experience, and we can't deny what we understand based on the three-dimensional experience. But that if you and I think this is part of the problem with Christian religion is that it says, okay, the Gospels are a flat rendering of what Jesus was saying. But if we take the Gospels and juxtapose those with the Gnostic teaching,
right,
and we start seeing a multidimensional aspect of this. And so I was talking with somebody earlier today. I said, what we like linear,
yes,
explanations. That if this then that, and it's just that way forever. That works if you have a flat timeline,
right?
If you have a flat understanding, then if this then that. But if you say the what we are examining is spherical.
Mhm.
That means that there are more than one way to get from point A to point B than
Mhm.
than we understand. And I'm going to use this in terms of like when we think about flying from, say, New York City to London.
Mhm.
And if somebody, if we were to be given a global map, we would draw a straight line between New York and London. But the reality is that when planes fly, they fly along a curve
Right.
that mimics the curve of the Earth, and this curve actually is a more efficient route than the straight line, which runs counter to what we think about in terms of mathematics, that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line.
Yeah.
But that's so when we look at theology, we try to think of theology in term. We make theology flat. We try to make theology flat, and then we try to impose a template of anthropology onto that theology, and make the whole rendering flat because that's the easy way to understand it. But is the easiest understanding, and this is my question to your original premise, is the the short answer the best answer?
Mm.
And so I would say based on our conversation today, not anything else that I've known before, I would say the answer to that is no. The shortest answer. What is the oh God, what who is it that came up with this? That Occam's razor,
Yeah. I was just thinking of that. Yeah.
right? That the simplest answer is the one that makes the most sense.
Mhm.
But when we start talking about um, theology and anthropology, that that theory it begins to fall flat because it doesn't that the best answer is not the shortest answer.
Yeah. I think Occam's razor is good for detective work.
It is.
Like, don't overthink it. Maybe to a certain extent, diagnosis. They talk about zebras when you're looking for horses. Look for horses. Don't look for zebras. Right.
Yeah.
Um, but what's simple? I mean, just what is simple? I mean, if I was going to become a mechanic, I'm not going to get there through a simple route. I'm going to have to learn a lot. And I'm going to be challenged. If I want to become a good athlete in a new sport, I'm not going to get there easily. I'm going to
Yep.
become challenged. You see what I'm saying? Like,
Well, and that's the other thing too, is that I think that we fail to do the engineering, right? And this is really important because I look at this like you cannot make a gasoline engine burn diesel fuel,
right.
and you can't make a diesel engine burn gasoline. That in order to change that paradigm, it requires a paradigm shift in engineering.
So Occam's razor would say if you took diesel fuel, if you didn't have any diesel engines, you took diesel fuel and you added it to my car, then
Mhm.
Occam's razor would say diesel's not fuel, right?
Right. That's correct. But it is.
Right. So I don't put much stock in Occam's razor, but um, so here's how I'm thinking about what you said because I'm thinking about it, from my perspective and psychology, and so like this linear thing that we do is it's almost universally accepted is a left brain process, and it only exists in the left hemisphere of the neocortex.
Right.
Um, and it's important, you can't read without it. Um, you can't tell stories without it. You certainly can't engineer things. to a certain extent without it.
Yep.
It's a necessary part. I think the problem in our culture is we've made it the whole thing when it's not even anatomically close to the whole thing, right? So to give you another example, I talked about dreams earlier. Like, when was the last time anybody had a dream that didn't pick up in the middle of something already going on? Like, when was the last time you had a dream that had a real beginning, middle, and end? Like, most of our dreams, we pick up, we're in a scene already. We find ourselves, I find myself with my friend, or the night before, I find myself with people that I don't even know, but in the dream, they're my friends and I know them, right?
Yeah.
So there's no introduction, there's no meeting, there's no development of those relations, there's no beginning. We just get these like chunks in our dreams, right? And I think that reflects how other aspects of our mind think outside of the narrow parameters of left brain linear thinking.
Yeah.
And I think our problem is that we have leaned on the left brain as the only or the most reliable way of understanding something. So that's to your point, right? Like, we think linear is the simplest. We think it's the best. I think it's how we've been trained to think. I don't think our ancestors thought in such linear terms. In fact, I know they didn't. And the way we organize time. So I'll give you a fascinating experiment. I don't know if it'll work like that. I've done this in groups, but if I were to ask you or anybody else, where do you see the future, and point to it, where would you point?
And that is a really good question. I mean, that pushed a button with me, because you could say, okay, a simple answer is AI.
Well, I mean, what direction? Let me ask it this way: what direction do you see the future? If you were to point where your future is, where is it?
Okay, so whether you say like, okay, is it utopian or dystopian? Is that?
I'm not thinking in those terms. When you think about your future, you're going to Hong Kong when you see it, where do you see it? Do you see it in front of you, off to the side, up, down? Where do you see it?
I see it in front of me.
Okay, you see it in front of you. Now, I also see the future in front of me. So the first time I did this in a training, I was completely shocked that the majority of the room did not see the future in front of them. Totally shocked.
And I think that we're taught that, right? We're taught to think that the future is something on the periphery and is dependent upon certain things. Well, but if you say the future is in front of me, then that means that everything that I do is going to lead me to this future, irrespective of what I do.
So here's the interesting thing, Derrick. Most people will see it in generally either directly in front of them, so their timeline is running through them. My past is behind me, my future is ahead of me, right?
Yep.
Other people will see it from left to right. The past is off to the left, the future is off to the right. There are variations of that, but those are the two primary ways that people categorize future in their brain. Either you're in time or you're observing your timeline out in front of you. Now, what's fascinating is you can predict how a person will organize their life based on how they perceive time. But it's all perception.
Wow.
And you can learn. So they had us do this. It was really interesting. They had us put our timeline on a floor. So mine was in front of me. So I'm walking along my timeline. And then they said, okay, now I want you to stand on your timeline. Now I want you to turn around and look at your timeline. Or if you were looking at your timeline, I want you to step into your timeline. And when I stepped out of my timeline and looked at my timeline, I got dizzy, dude. I almost fell over. It was that disorienting. It's crazy to think about.
So I think about this like okay, so we have to say, okay, are we participants in our understanding of our timeline? Are we passengers in the understanding of our timeline,
Right.
or,
Exactly.
or are we victims
Yeah.
of our
Exactly.
timeline? And,
Exactly.
and so I like to think, and this is what I think. I think that the most successful people are the people who have control over their timeline. They see, okay, yes, this is going to happen, but this is going to happen because of these choices that I make. You know, we always say, people are broken down in three categories: people who watch what happens, or not, people who watch it happen, people who wonder what happened, and who make it happen.
Yeah. The interesting, I don't know why I'm getting off on timelines, but the one of the significant differences is if you perceive time out here, linear, out here in front of you, you're more aware of time and the passage of time. Almost in a spooky, accurate way. If time is running through you, you lose time easily. So you and I know this from being with you. Like we could sit down and start a conversation, and let's say we went to a restaurant, and 3 hours could go by, and we'd be like, "Oh shit, it's been 3 hours." And you know this, that you had people in your church that if you went 15 minutes past or whatever, they were getting a little antsy, right? The difference is the way you perceive time. The person who's aware of, I've given an hour to this. So I tried this when I was preaching, because I was one of these end time preachers. I just preached, this is my third landing, whatever. And if I shifted my timeline before I went in to preach, I could end at the exact time I wanted to end without looking at the clock.
Yeah.
So it's all perception.
Yep.
It's all the way that we organize it, which,
And to your point, I think that we control the perception.
we do. We can't.
We can't, because, like, I've known, like, where I have been preaching, and I'm acutely aware that I'm beyond the time that my hearers are normally hearing, and I'm like, okay, I know this is where I need to land the plane. But then there are some times where I'm so into the subject, and I see that the hearers are so into the subject, that I'm not compelled to land the plane.
Right.
I'm compelled to keep circling, because there's some information that's being imparted there.
Right.
So, so when we start talking about, okay, anthropology versus theology.
Yeah, let's get back on track. Sorry about that. It's a little detour.
No. I'm trying to circle it back, because what we need to do is we need to look at, okay, this is theology. This is our study, our survey of God,
right,
of consciousness, of the universe, whatever you want to call it, right? But anthropology is how this is expressed in me.
Yes.
So I have to go back all the time and do a critical thinking survey of what it is that I believe at this moment, and filter this through the lens of constructive or critical thinking, and ask, does this make sense? And I think that part of the problem is that we don't. That we formulated theology, that this theology works for me.
Right.
And because it works for me, it answers the questions that I need to be answered. I don't have a need to explicate that further, because what is it going to teach me? And I think that every person who's listening to this, or listening to that's dealing with a heady space, that I think that you need to go back and run what you understand, run what you believe through the filter of uh, constructive, creative, critical thinking, and ask yourself, does this make sense?
Yeah. I'm gonna add the second wing to that plane, if that's all right. I
Go
think
right
that's
ahead.
necessary. We've obviously, I think that's a necessary component. The second wing I would add is, how does this make you feel? How does this feel in your body? How does this feel? So here's how I'm thinking about it. Um, because our anthropology, it answers the question for us: what am I capable of? Like, am I limited to the laws of physics around me? Am I limited to the whims of a monarchical God that decides what I get to experience that's good and what I don't get to experience and all of that stuff? Or am I much more than that? Am I much more powerful than that, right? So, what I would say is, yes, do the critical thinking. And then also, how does it make you feel when you really think about whatever the theology is, the theology of justification by faith and original sin, and God
Mhm.
is separated from me, and I'm going to stand? How does it feel if you hear a message that we're all going to stand before the judgment seat of Christ and give account for every deed that's done in the body? How does it feel
Yeah.
to think about this cosmic cathedral where you're going to stand and your entire life is going to be combed through at the micro level, down to every thought and every word you ever spoke, and
Yeah.
you're going to have to count for every single one of those? How does that make you feel?
This is critical because how you feel is determined, it will determine how you walk it out.
Yeah. I mean, do you
Because
want
you cannot express beyond your feeling.
right?
So you bring up a very valid point. How does this make me feel? How does this make me feel? And so whatever it is, like original sin, whether it's how I view the LGBTQ community,
Right.
how do I see
Yes.
present day politics? How does this make me feel? And this is important because you bring up this is an essential seminal point because how you feel is how you're going to express it.
Yeah. Or suppress it. I'm either going to express or I'm going to suppress, right?
Yeah.
Like, well, I don't feel good about this. I really want to go to my niece's wedding to her wife, but I've got so much pressure from the church, my community. As a pastor, am I going to perform that ceremony?
Yeah.
And it I feel like I want to be there. I feel like I want to support it. I feel like I love her, but I'm being told that I should feel guilty about it. I'm being told that I'm committing some crime by against God. That, one of the things that's going to show up on the big
Right.
screen.
But how do you feel if someone is telling you, see, and this is the problem. This is where anthropology gets in the way of theology, is that anthropology tells you how you're supposed to feel about a certain thing.
100%.
And and I'm not beholden to feel a certain way. I have my own moral compass. I have my own critical thinker, and I'm going to take what I hear, what I experience, what I feel, and I'm going to run it through that.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm not going to outsource it. And then if I make a mistake,
Yes.
I'm going to learn from it. It's the mistake I was meant to make. I'm not making
Right.
their mistake.
It's not their mistake. It's your mistake.
Yeah. Which means I'm going to grow and get and benefit from it.
And you're going to own it.
Mistake, yeah. Like I, unfortunately, because we were so religious at the time, my niece, that's a real story. My niece didn't invite us to the wedding because she didn't think we'd come. Right.
Yeah.
And she had good reasons to think that. But if I were faced with the decision and felt divided and my heart really wanted to be there, but I didn't because I wasn't supposed to, because someone else said I wasn't supposed to, then I'm bringing their mistaken perception, overriding my own feelings, my own conscience, my own critical thinking,
right,
going in their trajectory now instead of my own trajectory.
Yes.
And I wonder why my life ends up where I don't want it to be, because I've been following everybody else's.
Yeah, is it abjugate? Where you
abdicate.
Yeah, you've given your franchise to someone else.
Exactly. And then I wonder why I'm not happy in my life. Why did my life end up here? Well, because you've outsourced all your decisions to the group because you thought the group knew better than you.
Dude, say that again so that everybody understands it. It's like when you outsource.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, because that's the thing. Like when we look at American business, like we outsource all different aspects of business to some external entity because we're convinced that this entity can do what we want to do cheaper than what we do. So when you start saying, I'm going to outsource this to someone because I don't want to expend the thought myself.
Right. And I think in our case, we're afraid to expend that ourselves.
Yeah.
Because in a democracy, the majority knows, right?
Yep.
Right. So, well, everybody else is doing it. It's easy to outsource it. Oh, I want to do this, but I'm not really sure. And I know it's going to cost me, but I don't know if the cost benefit, I don't know how that's going to play out. So I'm just going to play it safe and go with the group, but I'm outsourcing what I really want. What's genuinely what I want to do.
You brought up something really good there, the cost benefit analysis, right? I think that a lot of us don't run that. We don't look at the cost benefit analysis. We just say, okay, the path of least resistance. What makes me feel, what allows me to just kind of move forward means that I outsource this to someone else. And I'm not looking at the cost benefit analysis. I'm not looking at whether or not this benefits me or someone else. I'm just saying that this is the simple way out.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what we did with God. We outsource it to the Bible. We outsource it to our religion. To a certain degree, that's what we do with our own health and well-being. I'm definitely not someone that thinks that you should act like you know more than the doctor or, what is that? What is that thing where the person that knows the least is the most confident? What is that called again?
Oh, man.
I know
what you're talking about. There's actually a term for that.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that I presuppose to know more than about medicine than my doctor knows about medicine. But at the same time, I'm not going to outsource my healthcare and well-being to them just because they're experts. You know what I mean?
Right. No, and this is, I went through this week because for those of you that don't know, I got attacked by a couple of dogs on Monday.
Dunning-Kruger effect. Sorry, it just popped in.
Dunning-Kruger effect. Exactly.
Say that all over again. I'm so sorry I interrupted you.
No. Aaron mentioned the Dunning-Kruger effect, and this is absolutely germane to what we're saying, is that I was attacked by a couple of dogs. And some people might say, well, maybe you did something to aggravate the dogs, or maybe that there was some hidden sin in your life.
Yeah,
I'm serious because listen. You know, and people will say that, and none of this is the truth. The reality is that the dogs were being dogs. They did what they were supposed to do, and I just happen to be in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Now, um, so from the Dunning Kruger aspect of it, Dunning Kruger would say, okay, I did something to cause this,
Right. Right.
and I didn't.
Right.
I didn't. And that's the other thing too. That for all of you that are listening, there are things that are happening in your life, and you might inaccurately conclude that this is because of something I said or did. And I want you to understand that most of what you go through, most of what you experience, most of what you're challenged with has nothing
Right.
to do with what you do. Anyway.
Yeah, well, that's Occam's razor again, right? Like we like those simple cause and effect
Yep.
analysis.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. I'm kind of empty thought right now. So
Well, this is a good place to land the plane. I mean, you've this is the thing, and this is my closing argument, is that what we want to do is we want to assign some human attribute to something, whether it be God's understanding of us, our understanding of God, whether or not Jesus is the Savior, yada, yada, yada. We want to ascribe some human characteristic that we understand to anthropology to say, okay, this is how I'm going to understand God. And if I'm correct in assuming this, Aaron, is that what you're saying is that we have to look beyond what we think God is and what we think God will do, and when we do that, we don't assign a anthropology as we understand it to God, to theology, that we understand, okay, we're able to separate God from humanity.
yeah, that opens up maybe a part 2 for this, right? Because how our anthropology affects. So the way I was looking at this was the way our theology affects the way we think about our anthropology. But what I'm hearing you say is the way we think about our anthropology affects the way we think about our theology.
Well, think about this, right? We want a God to be vengeful,
Yeah,
to punish sin, and to basically flow along with what we believe
yeah,
God should do. So what we're doing then is we're imposing our anthropology
right,
on our theology,
right,
and that's not right.
right,
Because if we operate from a theological standpoint, we have to understand that God's consciousness exceeds ours.
right,
So that means that some of the things that we expect God to do, God will not do,
right.
because that would feed into our anthropology.
Correct. Yeah, that's a whole other episode right there. We could unpack that for an hour easy.
Yeah.
So, all right, man. I'm gonna go back to my smoke-filled reality.
Going back to hell.
So grateful. I just got to be honest. I'm so grateful, and I feel so bad for the people that have been displaced from their homes or lost their homes, and the firefighters that are out there fighting it. There's been, I think, a last report. There's more than just this fire, but there've been, firefighters that have lost their lives in these forest fires that are going on the last couple of weeks in Colorado, and it's a weird place to be because your heart grieves for what's happening. I've grief for nature. Like these places just destroyed where my wife spent her childhood in the mountains has been completely wiped out. And at the same time, I'm so grateful for what I have, the stuff that I take for granted every day. So.
Well, I thank you for all that you share with me, that what you're seeing, what you're going through, and my sincere hope, from both an anthropological and a theological standpoint, is that the people of Colorado, that they overcome.
Yeah.
This.
Yeah.
And that's my prayer.
It's a good perspective. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us for Growing in Real Time. And thanks for watching by replay. Let us know if you watch by replay. Check out Derrick's article on Patheos. It's posted to his socials. And it's really excellent stuff there. So with that.
I've said to people, I said this to you and to Jew, which you guys are like my two besties, that I believe that when we understand what I am really means, that we really understand what the Jesus mission was about.
Yeah.
And we understand what our individual mission is about. And I just can't say it enough. I think that from the standpoint of a writer, I think that this is my magnum opus.
Yeah, it was really good. It was I enjoyed it very much. So.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
And I guess peace out, everybody. Have a great 4th of July.
Y'all have a happy 4th of July. Enjoy the 250th anniversary of this nation. Whether you can celebrate or not.
Enjoy your day, regardless of where you land on that.
Yep.
Enjoy your day.